I've personally lost multiple of my really, really close mates, one, my best friend, my whole childhood, to suicide. And one of the things that we found in doing our market research for this workplace program was that men have the highest risk factor for suicide. Hey guys, welcome to the Remind podcast, where we combine neuroscience, spirituality, and personal development to help you heal your deepest wounds and transform your life. In this episode, Dave and I are going to be deep diving into the topic of men's mental health. And we've done a little bit of a pun here, a play on words of dudes in denial, but it's making light of a really heavy topic. And so we want to chat about that today.
Absolutely, and not to be one to give up the opportunity of a good dad joke, we're not talking about men swimming in a river in Egypt, right? It's not dudes in denial. It's a big topic, and being a dude myself, been through the ups and downs, like most of my fellow dudes and dudettes, and it's just there's just something different about what society believes masculine or a man should be doing. And should we be the fixers? Shouldn't we be able to fix this ourselves? Can't we just fix it? Can't we just replace it? Can't we just do something like that? So it's going to be an interesting topic today.
It's heavy. It's really heavy, actually. We have been doing a lot of sort of market research in mental health. We're developing a workplace program, and I have done a fair bit of work in the space of businesses that are male dominated. And I think maybe I'm drawn to that work anyway. Like, I grew up racing BMX. I was a massive tomboy as a kid, and I relate better to men than I do to women generally. At least that's been my experience. And so I have a real heart for men who are struggling, because that was the majority of my peers, my friends, my closest mates. I've personally lost multiple of my really, really close mates, one, my best friend, my whole childhood, to suicide. And one of the things that we found in doing our market research for this workplace program was that men have the highest risk factor for suicide. So that's the first thing. Men already have the highest risk factor for suicide. And then even more than that, out of all the industries in the whole entire country, the industry that has the highest rate of suicides is the construction industry. They have a 200% higher suicide rate than any other industry average. So like that, I just got chills. I literally have goosebumps right now. Reflecting on that statistic. It's frightening. And my husband and I talk about it quite a bit, and you know, he's in the construction industry, and really wanting to understand, like, why? What are the barriers to men seeking mental health support? A lot of the men who I see as clients end up my client because their wife encourages them to work with me. But they've never spoken to therapists. They've never gotten help in any other kind of way, shape, or form. And this is the first time. So why? What's the story with that?
Well, let me talk from my own experience. And my own experience has been, I've been around emotions all my life, but sort of separated from the emotions. A lot of the females in my family, quite emotional. And so when I looked at emotions, I looked at them as, well, how is this emotion serving you? You can't get out of bed. You can't do this. This is a problem. You know, you're crying, and therefore it's to me from a very young age, it was my perception that emotions were weakness. It was if you are on top of your game. If you're on top of your life, you don't need to worry about these emotions. You can either just get rid of them, drink them away, distract yourself with some of your favorite things. Go drive the car, go fix the car, go spend time with your mates, just whatever it is, like adrenaline stuff. And so that's what started me off when I was a kid. And then you sort of look at, okay, well, when I look at emotions that I saw from my father, it was either he was calm, he was protective, or he was angry and frustrated, but never vulnerable. Never like he'd be wanting to fix my problems. If I had a problem, he'd want to fix my problems. That's and if you go to dad, you want the fix necessarily. Not necessarily going up for, and again, I'm just talking about my personal experience. So everything's different, but I do feel from a masculinity standpoint and I suppose a stereotype of what being a man means in society before. I know the needle's shifting and it's moving, but it meant that you fix. And so, and then there's the masculine mindset. There's this amazing YouTube clip, and I'm sure it wasn't for YouTube, but it's like it's a YouTube clip about there's a couple sitting on a couch, and the female has this pretend nail in her head, and she's talking to her partner saying, I've got these really big headaches, I've got this real big pressure, like right in there. And the partner, the husband's looking at her and going, there's a nail in your head. I don't want to talk about the nail, but it's just really, I just get these really intense pains and all of that. And the whole theory of the video in this sense was to try and get you to have a look at, don't try and fix a problem, sit in the emotion, tell them that you see it, tell them you understand, that you're there for them, as opposed to yanking the nail out, which most of the fiber in me was just sort of like, just get rid of the nail. And so if that's how we as masculines have been taught to love, which is, how do we love? We love by fixing. We love, and how do we fix ourselves? Well, we know how to fix a car. We know how to fix something around the house. We're there to protect our family, our children. If we show a sign of weakness, what does that mean? And so when it comes to when I first saw a therapist, it was in my late 30s. And I've described the scenario in previous episodes where I simply lost it at work. Absolutely lost it due to a situation that happened, which was a workplace thing. And it took me to the point where I knew I'd been pushed to such an extent that I simply had to see somebody. And there wasn't an inkling. It was like you're crashing through a brick wall and realize, something needs to happen. Or it might be in someone else's cases, you've got a partner sort of going, okay, you need to see someone, or ...
Yeah, the ultimatum.
And so normally it has to get to kind of that point. And then I start to think about, and I'm a bit of my guilty pleasure these days is TikTok. And you can see some of the dancing and all of those different funny clips or whatever trending clips, but then you sort of come around some of the motivational speakers and the ones that are talking about the feminist movement and talking about what does it mean to be a true masculine and all of these things. And the one thing that seems to pop up for me is when a man who hasn't been showing his emotions starts to show his emotions for the first time to his partner, because they would say, I really need you to open up. I really need you to be vulnerable. And this man's never been vulnerable before. When he becomes vulnerable, he suddenly becomes unattractive to the partner. It's an unattractive trait. And I'm not saying this is a blanket statement for all females or all partners, but when you've built up this sort of masculine shield, this masculine mask, this whole masculine, this is what I am, this is what I do, and your significant other says to you, I need you to let me in, I need you to hold space, I need you to be vulnerable, and you haven't gone through the understanding of what that actually means and what that will bring up for you, and you come at it from a wounded place, then suddenly you're not that strength giver, that provider. You're now in a wounded state, potentially, of being completely vulnerable. And then suddenly you're bringing up these signs of weakness that they have probably never seen before, and they don't know how to necessarily handle it. And what happens then? You just got to go back to what you were doing before. And on top of that, you now had that moment in time where potentially your partner's seeing you in a different light, a weaker point. You're not as attractive or whatever it is. So there's all of these things running through your mind as a man as to, well, I've never been shown it before. There's real risks in showing it. I've got to keep my shit together. So the only thing I can do is let it out through the ways that I know. So if someone's really pissing me off, or I'm feeling very, very upset, dysregulated, someone cuts me off, well, it's going to end up in a 25-minute showdown in the car when it comes to road rage. It's going to come into something being blown out of proportion at the pub. Someone's getting a black eye. Someone's going to, be cooling down, at the police station overnight. That's how it's going to come out. Or, as you've mentioned before, my heart goes out to anyone who's feeling this way. It's too much.
Yeah.
Why am I going through all of this? And so...
And it's that helplessness of there's no way out.
Well, there isn't, because when the feminine energy gets together, it always comes, I won't say always, it comes from a heart-centered place of communication, talk, be open. Even in a stereotypical, it's always about be open. Maybe it's too open, maybe it's chaotic, maybe it's whatever. Blokes come together, it's very different.
Yeah. It's
very hard to get into that mindset when, again, you're dealing with mates who have probably been raised around the same time as you, whose fathers have been raised around the same time as them by their dads and their dads. So it all comes down to modeling.
Yeah, 100%.
And so how do you deal with it? You just drink more? You just drive faster? You just, punch out when you need to? You just distract yourself with gaming, fixing a car, building a big man shed? Now, don't get me wrong, I love a big man shed, but it's not. Yes, because we simply don't know, and there's too much to lose. If I'm not the provider, if I'm not the rock, if I'm not the big bloody oak tree, if I'm not all of that, then what the hell am I? Yeah.
What am I here for? What purpose do I serve? I think that's a really, really big point. I think some of the most common things I see is the emotional challenges of men don't necessarily come out in emotion except for anger. And this is, again, like you said, not a blanket statement. It's just from societal programming, this is what's more likely to happen. That the emotional side doesn't come out unless it's anger. But the behavioral signs of emotional challenge, like addiction, like toxic relationships, like self-sabotage, like you mentioned, the distraction, it's almost as though there's a mentality of it's my role to provide. And that provision looks like financial provision, providing, being the breadwinner and all those kinds of things. And then completely detaching or dissociating from those more connection-oriented, relationship-oriented responsibilities, like, reading the kids a story of a nighttime and being there to pick them up from school, or doing those more emotionally reliant roles. And those mental health challenges can be really isolating, because I think you mentioned a lot of it is modeled. And so those stereotypes and societal expectations, that can really point to these intergenerational belief patterns that to be masculine means you're strong, you're stoic, you're self-reliant, you don't show vulnerability. If you show emotion, you're weak. I grew up with statements like, don't be such a pussy, or you're crying like a girl, or things like that. That was common in my childhood. I remember my brother being told that. I remember, like I said, I grew up racing BMX, so almost all of my mates were boys. And that was just so common. And then it was really interesting how you said the adrenaline seeking and seeking for that rush. There's some really interesting neuroscience research that showed that when we have sort of shut off from our feeling experiences and that connection to emotion and sense of self, that our brain wiring actually shifts in terms of we become wired where we can only experience ourself through stress and through high risk, and impulsivity is a good way to get that stress. So in that case, it exactly as you said, it's the fast cars, it's the risk-taking behaviors, it's adrenaline seeking kind of stuff. And that, I think, is really self-destructive. So to have those patterns hardwired is really frightening and quite dangerous.
And you're right, but no person chooses to get there by themselves.
No,
It's
no
definitely
way.
one of those things where you start off like what you're saying, right? If you're feeling so like you're suppressing yourself because you have genuine needs, but you've never been shown how to look at it, to be able to ask for help, and especially the biggest thing I'll always come back to as a guy, and what's been the biggest shift for me is to be able to be vulnerable, to be able to open up and not be afraid to be vulnerable, and to not sort of judge myself as being weak while being vulnerable. And that's been very difficult because there's still a relic of it that still sits with me today. That's sort of like, how can you see strength in vulnerability? And for me, it is huge when, as a man, as a masculine, that you can find that ability to be nurturing and vulnerable. The amount of strength it brings you is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because it allows you to be a bit more in control. It allows you, well, when I say control, it allows you to not be out of control, which is probably better, because things are always going to happen.
So do you mean when you say allows you to not be out of control, is that like saying it allows you to be present, it allows you to be in the moment and here?
Yes, but also to a point where in the past, you can't stop circumstances, you can't stop idiots, you can't stop frustrations.
Yeah.
Where I would find out of control is when my emotions have just gone to a level of I'm not just unregulated at this point, where I'd feel there's a level above that, which would be, I'm going to do something I regret, but I have to do it anyway. It's sort of something where I'm just getting really angry, no control whatsoever.
Yeah.
There's huge emotions coming out, and it's just, you're just vomiting, you're just spewing, you're just exploding frustration and negativity. You can't even keep a lid on it. And then you know that after you do it, yes, you come down and you're sort of panting and going, oh, geez, that was a big one. And then you start to beat on yourself because you acted like an idiot, or even worse, you try and justify it. I wouldn't have done this if this, but you still feel like a shit anyway. You're just trying to justify.
Do you though? Like, do you? Because this is something in my first marriage that used to play out, like those big explosions, the saying things you could never take back, the really, really massive, like property damage, all kinds of things from my ex-husband. And I used to describe it like whiplash, where I would still be in this state of shock, processing what had happened. And the next day he'd be like, I don't even know what you're so upset about, as if I was crazy, because I was still kind of like, I don't want you to touch me and I'm a bit scared of this and those kinds of things. So I don't know. I've never had evidence that there was that remorse or feeling bad about it. So
Sure.
maybe that deflection was the evidence.
But
That
I was exactly, because here's the thing: if it was justified, then you don't shush it away, right? If I felt justified in it, and there was something that you have done or something external has happened, and I've acted appropriately, I don't need to shush that away. I don't need to deflect from that action. I don't need to pretend it didn't happen, right? So that in itself means that you're not proud of your actions. You're not happy about what happened, because what you're trying to do is you want to get back to normal. You want to almost pretend it didn't happen.
yeah.
And that for me is a huge sense of, I can't say it. I won't say it. I don't necessarily believe it, but there's a part of me that's at war. It's too uncomfortable to recognize what I did, and I don't want to recognize it. But for me, it would definitely end up in being a shit. Now, I didn't sort of get to a point of being violent, but when the frustrations came out, and I'm talking about family, if someone was violent towards me, they would get the sharp end of the stick, and I wouldn't have a problem with that. But but sometimes you take all this pent up energy, all this pent up frustration, all this pent up, what else do I want to call it? Let's just leave it at that. And then someone just tips it over the edge, and you sort of just, it's a massive explosion.
Yeah, I
But
love that actually. I am reminded of this water bottle. My kid's dad is who I was just describing, and of my son, where he had bumped into his dad one day who was holding a coffee, and he spilt the coffee, and his dad erupted with anger and he was really frustrated. And my son felt like he was bad and he was naughty and he had done the wrong thing, and really took it so personally and started like really self-loathing. And I ended up taking him into the kitchen, and I had a bottle of water. And I said, "What's inside this bottle?" And he goes, "Water." And I said, "Okay, I want you to bump into the bottle." And so he bumped the bottle and it fell over. And I said, "What just spewed out of the bottle? What just came out of the bottle?" And he goes, "Water." "Why did the water come out of the bottle?" And he goes, "Well, because it was in the bottle." And I said, "Exactly." So when Dad's anger came out, was that because of you and what you had done? Or was it because he had anger inside him and you just happened to bump the bottle over? And he really helped him to be able to see, well, what's inside of us is what comes out of us. And something that I've observed a lot with working with men, I love working with men, is really peeling back the layers of that moment where they have numbed out to all the other emotions. Because underneath anger is a really scared, really sad, really vulnerable little child. And that child has learned from a really young age that they have to numb out any experience of their emotions in order to fit in order to be safe, in order to be accepted, in order to be tolerated. And so I think the other really interesting thing is that that's why sometimes men struggle to have the self-awareness of that early signs of just feeling a bit dysregulated, feeling a little bit, like their capacity is reduced in that moment. And it's like completely nothing, completely unaware until it's a 9.5 out of 10 and it's too late to do anything about it. Because the intensity of the emotion, of the only emotion that was socially acceptable for them to feel, which was anger, the intensity of that already gets so high before it even enters their awareness, because they're so disconnected and numbed out from the experiences of their body, that has to get so high, and then the expression of that is so reckless.
Well, it can be, because you're just now reacting. You're reacting to your feelings, your emotions. Because I think deep down, and this is not just men, this is most people, they just want to be good at what they do. They want to be a good person. They want to feel wanted. They want to feel included. And so, especially when it comes to relationships, because that's probably going to be the biggest thing that triggers a guy, is going to be, well, it triggers anyone. I mean, let's not just say guys. And so in a relationship, you're wanting to be, you're wanting to feel loved, you want to feel wanted, you want to feel secure. And so a lot of this has been built on, okay, well, what do men generally bring to a relationship? It's supposed to be stability, providing, protection to a certain degree. And all of these things, and, they don't need to be the ones that, aren't driven, they're hugely emotional, that have, crippling emotions, which means they just simply can't do anything, because is that what their partner's looking for? Now, I'm not sort of suggesting being vulnerable does that, but especially myself, my experience has been, when you allow emotions in, they will overwhelm you. And when you get overwhelmed, you're useless to no one, because for a guy, it's about, what do I bring? And if there's something broken, how do I fix it? And so emotions, from was modeled to me, don't do those emotions, don't do those things. You can't fix emotions. You can't fix a situation by just being more emotional with someone who's emotional.
Yeah.
And so being able to change that talk, change that narrative, and to be kinder on yourself. Like, how do you go from all of these things being pent up to being able to actively release them? Especially when there is a narrative, doesn't matter how big or small it is, on men are being asked to be more vulnerable, but at the same time, there's a risk that when you are more vulnerable, then you're no longer that attractive. You're not being as masculine. So
On that, sorry, I was just going to say that on that, I think it's really interesting, because I think you're right. I think a lot of men cop a lot of that especially from their partners, saying, I want you to open up to me. I want this, I want that. But actually, it's so new for the man to open up, that they've never had that modeled to them. They don't know what language to use. They don't know how to express it. They don't know how much detail to go into. They don't know how, all of that is so new. But as much as the woman thinks that she wants that, she also needs to know how to handle that, because that's new for her too. If this has not
100%.
been, if that's not been the pattern and the dynamic of that relationship, then she's completely out of her depth too. And so shift this dynamic of, all of a sudden, to have a relationship that's a container where it's safe for the man to actually show up and express and be the undiluted version of himself, and for the woman to step into her masculine energy to then hold space for that, to be that rock solid thing. It's this dance. It's got nothing to do with gender. It's got nothing to do with sex. It's got to do with energy. And for her to step into that, it's very possible that that's going to be just as clunky and just as unfamiliar for her as it is for him. And so this is where the pattern in relationships can happen, where they're kind of like, well, we don't know how to do this. We don't know how to do this. And so the whole "you're not attractive to me anymore" thing is just because there's change. Change feels scary. It brings up shame in me that I can't be the partner that you need me to be when you're expressing that, because I don't know how to do that, even though I know I want you to express, which then brings up that shame and I'm not good enough kind of thing. So it is just so complex.
And it is. And look, we've been banging on about it, especially myself, about this particular topic. There is a point in which, when this is opened, that, it's a bit like you talk about the bottle analogy. It's sort of like, you imagine taking a Coke bottle and just drinking a little bit out of it, or just any fizzy drink, putting the lid back on, and I want you to shake it. Shake, 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 shake. I'm going to shake it because of this relationship. I'm going to shake it because I've got this thing going on at work. I'm going to shake it because I've got this money pressure over here. I'm going to shake it because of all of that. Now, it's going to feel tense once you've shaken it, but no harm, no foul. And now someone's telling you, I want you to let it out. Let it out, David. All right. Crack. Goes everywhere. Oh, shit, better not do that again. And it's just this sort of perception, right? And it's the fear of what happens if and when I do this, which I believe is a main blocker as to why men won't do it. Because I can deal with the fact that I know I'm not okay. I'm still holding the Coke bottle for all the podcast listeners. It's imaginary. That's okay. It's still contained. I've at least got part of it together. If I don't rattle it for a week or two, and then it'll naturally calm down. So when you have all this stigma around it, and it's so important that we've never been shown how to do it, and we're starting that conversation now. I'm starting that with my son when he gets upset and frustrated. If he starts crying about something, I'll give you something to cry about. This is in the past. Or if he's got a real big problem, like, imagine, and my son's only 8 years old, but I can imagine an 18-year-old version of him getting really angry and aggressive. As another man, how am I going to meet that? Well, it's fire with fire. It's not fire with love and compassion. That doesn't win any fucking wars. So, and again, I'm coming at it from a very stereotypical way of doing it. What's making you feel so upset? You don't have that sort of time or clarity when someone's at it, 11 out of 10.
Yeah.
So when we're bringing that awareness now into it, what we're now talking about is for anyone. And we have singled out men for the title of this video because, as a general rule, someone who is deeply in their masculine will be afraid of being vulnerable. But this can apply to anyone. What we're saying is, how can you allow yourself to express these things, to be vulnerable, to be able to manage these emotions, to connect, to be present, because they're all absolutely possible. You can have emotions and you can be an amazing masculine all at the same time. I'd even say that when you do get into your vulnerability and you're able to do it, it makes you an even better masculine than just someone who can chop wood, carry water.
Yeah, because it's centered masculine energy, which is very strong and safe, as opposed to distorted or disowned masculine energy, which is very chaotic and childish.
Almost to a point where it has to be a unhealed masculine has to have controlled environments around him.
Yeah.
To be able to be okay. And so it's a responsibility of everyone around him to be able, to be able to make sure they bring the best out of the masculine. Where someone who has gone through, even started the healing process and gone through that journey, you're doing that for yourself. So no matter what it is, you're able to provide some form of container for a situation, even if that is for yourself.
Yeah.
And to be able to share that vulnerability, I feel this way because of that. as opposed to it will come out in 4 to 5 weeks from build up to build up to build up, and then suddenly you'll just lash out at your person, your partner, work colleague, because it's all gotten too much.
Flog
And
your
then like
kids,
give them a
yell at
smack.
your kids.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah,
and then
it's
sudden
so
and
true.
then sudden
Or exacerbate the addictions. That's where, and this is, start drinking more, start numbing out with other kind of drugs, even gambling, porn addiction, you name it. All of those addictive behaviors are all an attempt to self-regulate.
Absolutely. Or like what you've experienced before. Can we just pretend it didn't happen without having to talk about it?
Yep.
And then can I get you to stop, can I get you to feel ashamed about bringing it up in the future? This is all having to dance around that core wounding, which is, as you said before, I don't feel seen. I don't feel it's safe to feel unsafe. I don't feel safe to be able to sit in this and to find a way out and heal this. I don't believe that emotion and vulnerability equals strength at all.
Yeah. 100%. And I think I want to encourage people, because you can learn this, like, just because you've
100%.
never had it modeled. I've got a perfect example at the moment. One particular couple I'm working with, I said to them, can you tell me, so the man goes, I want to be a better husband. I want to be a better father. I want to blah, blah, blah. And I said, okay, so tell me about all the amazing examples of loving, attentive husbands that you've ever seen. And he's gone, I can't. I don't know any. And I said, exactly. So how could you possibly know? It would be like my husband saying to me, hey, Ash, can you rebuild this engine? Well, if I had an instruction manual and I had learned how to rebuild engines, then the answer would be yes, I could do that. But I've never seen it done. I don't even know what you're talking about. No, I can't. And instead of shaming myself for not being able to do the thing that he really wants me to be able to do, I can acknowledge that I don't have the knowledge I need yet. I don't have the skills I need yet, but I actually have capacity to learn. And so I would say to you, if you're listening and you are a man, I would say to you that just because you might not have this right now, just because you don't know how to, first of all, identify emotions, relate to emotions, even know what they mean, doesn't mean to say you can't learn it. And just because you may not be able to show up in relationship the way that you want to, or even the way your partner wants to, you might be falling short as a father. You might be, not the father that you want to be. Whatever it is for you, the addictions, the behaviors, whatever it is that you're struggling with, when you have some actual guidance to give you the instruction manual, to see and know how it can be done differently, that's when you can start to change your life. And now, traditional talk-based therapies and all those kinds of things can feel pretty overwhelming, because it goes against the grain of every cell of your body is wired to not talk about your issues. Every cell of your body is wired that it's weak to speak, or that it's not masculine, or whatever it might be. But for example, I think this is why I love working with men so much, and the work that I do is so different, because we don't need to talk about the issues in order to be able to overcome it. Your body knows the issues. I don't even need to know, because sometimes you don't even know. My body has emotional data from when I was 2, when I was born even, that I can't remember. I can't consciously remember, but my body remembers it. That's how our nervous system works. It stores every bit of data. It stores that emotional data so that it can remember for next time when that thing comes up again, what it's going to feel like, so that I can protect myself, so that I can defend myself. And so to have an approach where you don't have to sit there and deep dive and relentlessly talk about all the issues, I think is so important to actually know that there's that option out there, because you don't have to be stuck. You don't have to, go into story and be talking relentlessly about those uncomfortable things. You just need to be willing to feel, You need to be willing to feel. And when you haven't felt for so long because you had to completely cut off from those feelings, that can be pretty overwhelming.
Absolutely. And for me, and I'm assuming I'm not alone here, feeling equaled weakness. And that was something that I really had to work through, that it actually wasn't. And I'll encourage anyone listening here who's resonating to it, that feeling is strength. You are not weak when you have feelings. You are not weak when you show emotions, because you are a human being that has human emotions. And so allow yourself whichever way you can. And for me, that started with being vulnerable. At least just take the first step. Whatever that first step for you is, doesn't need to be a massive one. You don't have to do it all at once, but just know that if you resonate with strength and you want to provide and you want to be that pillar, then navigating, managing, understanding your own emotions are not just desirable, it's critical
Yeah,
that you're able to
100%.
do that.
Absolutely. And even if it's just one person, we're not saying, that you have to be vulnerable in every aspect of your life, but even if it's just one safe person to begin with, and practice there. Find one person who you can say, hey, would you be up for, a round of golf, so you can have a chat, connect. Something that I absolutely love is that my husband goes out for dinner, burgers, usually every single Thursday night, almost without fail, with a group of guys. And, mostly they talk about cars, mostly they talk about bloke stuff, but there's a point of connection where when something does come up, there is consistency, there's certainty, there's connection. They are always, there's a finger on the pulse to know where they're all at. And the beautiful thing about that is that, we've had circumstances in our lives where the rug's been pulled out from underneath us, from, health challenges to relationship challenges or whatever it might be. And it means that there's no hiding from it, because they always know where each other are at. And that is just so, so powerful. So look at who those safe people could be for you in your life. Look at how you can start having those conversations and inviting those, as you said, Dave, those opportunities for vulnerability beyond the surface level stuff.
That's it. And also, we've talked about talk-based therapy. It has its place. It's not it's not the complete tool. It is a tool in the toolbox that you use. So even if you've resonated with the fact that we've been talking about things like you're afraid to open up to someone who you're very close to, this is where therapists can help. This is where even just the intention of you wanting to seek that, to practice being vulnerable, so that you can show up in different ways in different relationships. You can absolutely be doing that through a therapist. I wouldn't be going and saying that the therapist you're going to go there X amount of sessions and it's done. Probably not. But it's absolutely worth starting. It's absolutely worth trying if you feel called to do that. And you'll know, because you'll feel, I really think I really want to speak to a therapist. But if you have a shame around the fact that you're telling people that you're seeing a therapist, you don't have to tell them. And you can work through all of those type of things. And yes, there's other modalities and things, especially what's done here at the Remind Institute, which takes different areas into account. Work on it from there. Check other YouTube videos. Just find your little path. Find what works for you. But it's about sharing.
Yeah. And showing up.
Exactly. And building that safety for yourself when you are sharing and showing up, knowing that you're not going to die, you're not going to be less of a man. If anything, you're going to be more.
Yeah. Love it. So powerful, Dave. So powerful.
All right. Well, for anyone listening, if this is something that's really resonated, let us know in the comments. If you want us to explore this a bit more, let us know. Again, reach out on the socials. Big topic, heart goes out to anyone who's found us for the first time based on this topic. But proud of you that you've started at least going through and just recognizing that that's what you're looking for. But anything else you want to add, Ash, before we wrap up?
No, that's it from me today. I've loved this conversation. I really hope that men out there are encouraged by it, just to know that they don't have to go through it alone.
Absolutely.
There's avenues of support. They're worthy of that.
Yeah, you got this. Till next time, till next week. See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.